Hi, and welcome back to Real Opinions. This is another episode, our second episode of Backstory Scripts, that we're going to be looking at Shadow Company.
This was originally written before Shane Black had written Lethal Weapon. It was actually Shane Black's first ever completed script, and it was the one that got him his agent. Basically, all the studios said, "We like your writing style. We're not going to make this, but we like your style. Write something else for us." And he wrote Lethal Weapon. But then, like, a few years later, after he'd sort of got himself a bit of success, I mean, bear in mind that for ages, Shane Black had the record for the most expensive sell on a script ever. You know, he was big in Hollywood. Like, he made more money with it selling his scripts than anyone did. It's just he didn't do many of them. So
Which script was that?
That was The Long Kiss Goodnight, I think. So, you know, he's quite a big name by this point, and they go like, "Oh, let's take another look at this Shadow Company thing." And they get Fred Dekker to do it with him. Fred Dekker worked with Shane Black on the Monster Squad. So it's kind of a similar-ish thing in that it's got a supernatural leaning and it feels less like a Shane Black film than his others do. That seems to be the thing, like Fred Dekker's there to sort of maybe temper down the Shane Blackiness a little. So they wrote this. John Carpenter was attached to direct.
I could definitely see that.
Definitely. And Walter Hill was attached as well as producer. Walter Hill made lots of very important films in the 1980s, like The Warriors and things. So, you know, it was like pretty exciting, but for some reason never got made, but it's got quite a big cult following, which is why I wanted to read it for this. So it tells the story, the basic gist of it, before we go into the spoiler section. The basic gist of it is it's about a guy who discovers that these people that he knew in Vietnam have been sent back home. Their bodies have been found and they've been sent back to America from Vietnam. And he is like terrified by this because it turns out that these war buddies of his are actually unstoppable killer reanimated corpses. And they run amok the town. And it's a very simple kind of, I hesitate to call it a zombie thing because it's not like they eat brains or anything. But it's like a supernatural action hybrid thing, as these monsters attack the town and the various townspeople kind of have to fight them back. So it does feel like, you know, like The Fog or like a Carpenter film, definitely.
The Fog was definitely but that one was the closest for me in that it had, I think it also had like scenes at a church and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it does.
And it was just this, like this force coming that no one else knows really how to fight it.
And even the visuals, the way it's written in a way that, like, they're always talking about silhouettes and streams of light and...
Yeah, that's very similar as well, yeah.
Things, it's described almost as a sort of, please make this, Carpenter.
And I definitely did imagine it in my head with that kind of flair, like Carpenter flair to it, and I think that made it better.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's well written in that sense that it does kind of evoke those images quite well. It does read like a Carpenter film.
Before we kind of go into a synopsis, I just want to give our general opinion in case people don't really want spoilers for it and they want to read it themselves first. Would you recommend reading this?
Yes.
I definitely would.
I sort of see the early Shane Blackness in it because it has a lot of his hallmarks. It's set at Christmas and they keep going on about it all the way through. His Christmas songs playing. It's set at Christmas and it's got kind of, I guess, a kind of buddy cop element towards the end. They're not cops, but, you know, a kind of a duo standing up to everything.
Yeah, but it's less so. Yeah, less so than any of his
But
other
it does
stuff,
feel like it, where Shane Black films traditionally have very kind of witty dialogue and sort of almost parody cliches, this is much more in the realm of those cliches themselves.
Yeah.
So it does feel like early Shane Black. That's fine. It's his first script. It can't.
It's very first script. So it's good.
It feels like a first. It feels like his first script, and you can see how it would develop from there. But I think it's got a very kind of, for a start, compared to Passengers, reading the action here was infinitely more coherent.
Yeah.
I understood what the fuck was happening when action sequences were being written. It's written I think it's written in a very readable way. I like his sort of style of almost like noirish sort of... It's written not in an eloquent full sentences, but just like in half-clipped phrases and things that just get across the point. Like
I get what you mean with the noir kind of comparison. I get what you mean with that in the way that some sentences read.
Kind of hard boiled style.
Yeah, and the like lines where it definitely did read like you could imagine the detective looking out over a city, describing it that way some of the times. But I definitely get what
Yeah.
you mean in that it definitely felt like it was falling more into tropes than
Yeah.
mocking them, or it felt if it'd been written as a modern thing, it almost feels like someone's written like a love letter to those kind of
Yeah.
films, as opposed to something actually being written in that era. It's quite
Yeah.
strange in that.
I understand exactly what you mean, definitely. But yeah, the way he writes action and the way that he writes sort of scene setups is very to the point, which I like. It's like I said, it's not written in complete sentences or anything, but I find those bits really dull in scripts where it's just like a description of the room and
Yeah.
then it's just like this is it. There's a fan on. People sat down and it does. They're not even like. It feels almost like the kind of things that the narrator would write in Fight Club.
Yeah.
Like they don't make that much sense as coherent sentences, but because you get the context of what's going on, you know what it means. And it just, to me, that's so much better because I hate reading, like, what's in the room? This is what the room looks like. And he just kind of foregoes all of that to really just get to the point and focus on action and dialogue, which
he picks
is
on the
much more
mood of a
interesting.
room as opposed to like, or the general style of a room as
Yeah.
opposed to just describing it fully or kind of.
Mm.
Yeah, he definitely just gets to the point, is definitely the best way of putting it. I didn't find that the action was completely coherent all the way through. There were tiny bits where I felt like it wasn't the clearest. But I mean, I thought I was a bit worried when not worried, when I thought Passengers, I thought maybe I just wasn't getting it because the action wasn't clear until we started chatting, and then I realised, but then this definitely just proves to me in that the action just, I mean, it's literally, you should simplify as much as possible is what I've gotten from
Yes.
this. In that, sure, I mean, he definitely does well with the emphasis, and there's still like he makes it even more dynamic, even though he's saying less, which I think really it just makes it more exciting and more fun to read. And it felt like it had more of a momentum, even though it was almost like the same length.
He doesn't feel like he's writing by a template of how to write a script, you know, like he's got a book in front of him.
Yeah,
Like, this is exactly how you format a scene or whatever. Like, he writes it however the fuck he wants. And so, like, there's a bit where a character is having a confrontation with another character, and instead of saying, like, in the stage directions, this guy looks upset, or it gets tense in the room, he just says the thing about assholes is...
the thing about assholes is never try to reason with them or something like
Yes.
that. It was
Yeah. And it's written like that. Like, that's how the script is written. There's a bit where, like, it says we cut to an ordnance storage facility, and it says, but because the audience is not reading this screenplay, we favor a sign on the door which cleverly reads ordnance storage facility.
Yeah.
And like that stuff's funny, and it feels like he's just trying to write it in a way that is fun and enjoyable, and he's not worrying about, oh, but this is how a professional is supposed to format a script, and he's not doing it in that dry, dull way. He says what songs are playing on the radio and stuff, and that's one of those rules that apparently you're never supposed to break, even though every script I've ever read has said what songs are playing on the radio. It just...
Yeah, it's I feel like breaking the fourth wall can be annoying, I feel like, in some scripts, but he definitely does it with just he sets up a playful tone and then he doesn't push it too far on the kind of script breaking stuff that you said, in that they don't follow the conventions of stuff. It was always subtle and it always helped it generally. Like that one line where you said, like, the thing with arseholes is not to reason with them, and that I think it helps establish the tone of the character much easier, and also it helps kind of clue you into how the main character thinks, and it almost felt like a monologue, like in his head or something like that. And the thing with films is that as well, that it's always difficult to get into the character's head without making them just say what they feel, and I think that was a good way of getting across this.
Yeah.
How he wanted it to be portrayed without having to say, like, this is fun, or this is silly, or this is blah blah blah. He just does it through the way that he writes it.
Yeah, definitely agree. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's not perfect, as we said. It definitely sort of falls into a lot of that, like, 80s movie tropes, for sure. But and there's particular, I felt like there was one relationship that whenever it was focused on, I kind of wanted those bits to end quite quickly. I'll say now because it's not a spoiler, but the relationship between Kyle and was it Heather?
Yeah.
Some of their scenes felt a bit badly written. They have like this conversation in a bowling alley, and it feels very like, we had a relationship once, and this is how I feel about it. Yes, well, this is your character flaw. No, I'm mad at you. By the way, I keep these pictures on the car that prove I still like you. And I don't know, you could have just said in the description, like, there's a picture of Heather, in his car, and that communicates that he
Yeah.
still likes her. But instead, he has to say it in a really awkward way. Like just before he leaves, he just goes, "I still have our pictures," and then he leaves. And it some of their stuff felt a bit. Meh.
I think it just as well, it proves back to the point that you said it feels like a first script, in that
Yes.
I think it's very easy to imagine lots of badass things happening, and it's easy for like I think it's easy as well for just a funny person to write funny. But when it comes down to the point where you've actually got to have emotions and stuff like that, that's much harder to nail, and it just felt like you said, it was very kind of stilted and a bit off. Like it felt like kind of, I think that's where it felt like its most 80s cheese, where because it felt like on the fact it was just taking place in, what is it, a bowling alley cafe.
Yeah.
And like he's he's wearing the cool jacket in the corner, and she's off with the preppy girls or something like that. And then it's
the way he describes him, he's so angsty and moody it hurts.
Yeah.
He's like brooding by the graveyard, like stood on the hilltop watching over everything. Like he is like a couple of points removed from Batman.
Right. So well, that's sort of starting with us going into the synopsis. Do you want to kind of break off our kind of mini review here and then go more into the synopsis?
Okay, so spoilers now. You've been warned. So the film opens with this guy in Vietnam. It opens in Vietnam. It was Vietnam, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it opens with this guy in Vietnam. The war is over.
Just about to be over. Yeah.
Yes, and this guy, and I can't remember his name, but it tells you in the script not to remember his name, which was funny because it's like he's gonna die. He walks into this bar and he's like, the worst part of this war being over is I don't know where to go for the action. And then the bartender like goes, "Oh, it's this way." And he walks down this corridor and it's all sleazy and it says like, behind some doors you can hear lovemaking and behind other doors babies crying. So, this is a bad place. And then he walks into this room and there's a load of soldiers sat around playing poker. And he's trying to like get in on the game, but no one's talking to him. And it's kind of intense. And he's like, "Okay, I just want to play with you guys." And they're all like throwing things in the middle to bet. And one of them just cuts off their own finger and puts it in the middle. Like that's what he's bet. And these guys, they don't say anything until eventually. So he pisses them off, and the soldiers start attacking him. And he's like backing out down the corridor, back into the bar, like firing at them, and they just won't stop coming. No matter like they're hit, they don't react at all, and they kill this guy. At which point, their commanding officer, called Stark, he walks in and is like, "Come on, we've got a mission to do." And then we cut to like a helicopter, and they're all sat, all ready to go in, and it does like it says that like we get sort of text introduction, like it will provide a shot of them and then text telling us who they are and everything. And there's these six supernatural soldiers. They each have like little quirks. One of them's now missing a finger. One of them's got sunglasses that he never takes off.
One's like a pyromaniac, and he has, was it like evil Woody Woodpecker?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few more other ones, but I mean, they've all just got variants of being tough. Like, what was it? One of them is a big fan of the Knicks.
Yes,
which was actually quite
to the
fun.
Knicks radio. And so Stark says to them, like, "Okay, we're sending you in this mission, this Black Ops mission, secret mission, because obviously the war's over. So you're going there, and there are no friendlies. So once you land, fucking kill everybody." And then we cut to Stark talking to, I think it was Woodhurst. Was that his name?
Yes.
Woodhurst, who is a general, although at this point in the story he's a colonel, because I had to research if he had been demoted or promoted.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Yeah.
Yeah, he was promoted later on. So this Woodhurst is like watching, and he's like fucking in love with this plan. He's like, this is destiny. This is gonna be great. Wherever they're going, and he asks something about what happened to the seventh one because there's 6 people in the helicopter, but there's a missing 7th guy. Anyway, they go off to their mission, and then we cut to numerous years later to a small town in America. It's a few days before Christmas because it's Shane Black, and we were introduced to Pollard. Pollard, I assume it's Pollard.
Pollard, yeah.
Yeah, he's our protagonist. He's a Vietnam vet. He's got no money. He can't even afford like food. He's just got like a handful enough to buy a black coffee at the diner. And from what we can gather, he's fairly disillusioned. It looks like he's one of those people, like a returning Vietnam vet who feels a bit betrayed by his country. You know, he's got no money. Everyone seems to hate him because he's like walking around with his jacket on. So, you know, he's carried the war back with him.
Yeah.
This guy in the diner's like, for fuck's sake, we lost. What are you doing? Stop being a jerk. So, you know, he's very much a put upon outsider. And while he's having this confrontation with this patron in the diner, he sees on the TV that in Vietnam they've uncovered some bodies that were like sealed up in some kind of religious place. These American soldiers whose bodies have now been discovered, they've been found. Because the Vietnamese were so frightened of them, even though they were dead, they like had to lock them away somewhere because they were just scared of these guys. But now they've found these bodies and they're returning them home to give them a proper funeral. And Pollard's just like, shit, no. And he runs off to a gun store to like stock up instantly. Meanwhile, we then cut to a funeral. And in the funeral, we get introduced to the last few characters that we need for this film. So it's Heather, who is the daughter of one of these soldiers that's now being returned. Kyle, this moody teenager who also has lost his dad to the Vietnam War. There's Doris, who's Heather's mum, and there's the sheriff, who is now Heather's stepfather. Stepfather, yep. Yeah. So they have a funeral for these dead guys.
And she has a sister as well that's not her her half-sister.
Yes. I forgot. Molly?
Kimmy.
Yes, that's it. So they have this funeral for the returning soldiers, finally kind of put it at rest, we assume. Meanwhile, it turns out that Woodhurst, the colonel from before, is now a general, and he's in his own little military base where he has got like he gets a bugler to come in and play like a song for the corpses before they're buried. I didn't know exactly what that bit was about. At first, I thought that might be what like wakes them up or something.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah,
but I guess not. Anyway, it turns out that this Woodhurst guy has gone a little crazy because he feels like the country, like I said, he feels also like the country has betrayed them, and he plans on resurrecting these 6 dead guys. He's ordered in, was it Agent Orange? I think that's what it's called.
But he's that'll be explained. But he's ordered in like a pesticide, basically, like a very strong like pesticide, and sprays it over the guys.
Yeah,
with ominous, like you'll wake up soon kind of speech.
Yeah, I mean, I know at one hand I am jumping ahead here, but it's fairly obvious what he's doing. Like if you know the premise. He's planning to resurrect these guys now that they've been brought back to America. So then we cut to the aforementioned bowling alley scene, and Kyle and Heather have a conversation. Heather's with her cool friends. Kyle's the brooding loser. It's, to me, I think just because I've been watching it recently, the thing that jumped into my head when I was reading this, the characters I pictured were, I forgot, Jonathan and, was it Nancy from Stranger Things? At least he reminded me of Jonathan, just like a brooding weirdo in the corner. And she kind of comes over to be a bit sympathetic and like, what's up with you? And he's like, everything's shit. And he gets mad at her for not being more upset, for not being as depressed as he is.
See, I definitely thought of Nancy from Stranger Things, and then the sporty guy from Breakfast Club. That's just too. That was my imagined casting.
But well, I think it's good that we both went Stranger Things, though.
Yeah, like she's definitely just like the it girl type.
Yeah.
The girl next door is the
Yes.
style.
Well, he even says in the script something like every school has one. And this is
every guy has a Nancy or something like that.
A Heather.
Her actual name. Every girl has a Heather.
Every guy has a Heather.
This is yeah.
Which
I liked that line.
Yeah, he's a brooding weirdo. But they've had a relationship in the past. They're broken up now, but he mentions that he's still kind of clinging on to it. He storms out, goes to his car, and there he meets Pollard, who asks him if there's any like construction work going. He so they have like their first interaction. It's a fairly kind of, it's just so that they can meet, basically. Then what? Then Heather gets home to the sheriff, who I quite liked their relationship, because he comes out and is like, obviously her actual dad has just been found dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, look, I'm sorry. I'm trying my best here. You know, I've got these two kids. I'm raising two kids. Your mum's a bit on edge at the moment. She's a bit
wired. Yeah, I suppose.
A bit wired, yeah. And rather than sort of like treating him like an asshole or anything, she just goes like, "Yeah, you're doing fine. It's okay," and kisses him.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, good. There's no bullshit drama here. She's understanding." Made me like her character. She was supportive of her stepdad. But the reason I mention this scene is because it turns out that there's a Christmas pageant, the Nativity or whatever, and Heather's little sister, whose name we recently remembered, Kimmy, is in this pageant. So they're all going into the center of town to perform this. That's sort of the important part there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Stark, the commanding officer of the men from the beginning, the one who told them no friendlies, he arrives at the military base and talks to Woodhurst. And it turns out that Woodhurst, he quickly discovers Woodhurst has lost his fucking mind, and he starts like asking like, what did you do? Why have you got this pesticide? What's going on? And Woodhurst, like, off his rocker, he blows his own head off. So Stark's like, fucking shit, this has gone weird. Meanwhile, we cut to the graveyard where these men were buried. And I really liked this scene. This is one of my favourite bits of it. There's like a guy, patrolling, he's got a gun. So I guess he's left over from the military funeral. And all of a sudden something weird starts happening with one of the graves. And he like panics and drops his own gun. And then the way it's described, it's like you don't see the zombie. He grabs the gun from beneath the ground and stabs the guy. And then whilst he's impaled with the end of the bayonet, he just like shoots into his corpse. I really liked that kill. I thought it was cool. So all the zombies have now woken up. They head into town. Pollard, he hears about this and like shows up like really panicked. There's like military police and general police all over the place.
So he goes to the gravesite and everyone is kind of surrounding these graves. And for some reason, even though he's cut a hole already into this graveyard, he then has to steal a car to get
I
out
was
of
a
it.
bit confused by the whole escape, but so he like points a gun at the cop. He's in the back seat and he tells him to drive, and they get out of the graveyard, and before long they drive into one of the zombies, and here we have our first sort of action sequence. The zombie shoots the police guy driving the car, so Pollard has to like kind of grab the wheel, try and steer it into the zombie. And the car flips, and the zombie keeps coming, and he shoots it, he shoots his legs off and everything, but it just keeps coming no matter what happens to it.
I think it's a good way in that it sets up the limitation of their power like straight away while being exciting as well, like the first taste of action.
So we have our first action sequence. Pollard, I think he kills this one, doesn't he? It's a fairly lengthy thing, but he actually kills this one. It's the one who cut his finger off.
Well, it's the thing where like it was
him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he has to so they mention about how he like I think he shoots his legs off. He keeps coming. He shoots his body off, and the
Yeah.
arms are still moving towards him. Then there's there's a second the kind of pyromaniac zombie is in the distance coming at him. Basically misses him with his bullets, getting closer and closer and closer, and he gets right up to Pollard and shoots, and
Oh
there's no
yeah.
bullets. So
Gives
he
him a
just
peace
stops
sign.
and he gives him, which is
Yeah.
like his character thing, is that he did it in the intro as well. He did the peace sign, which was kind of fun. I liked that. And he just walks away. I'm not sure why he walked away when they've killed with their bare
Yeah,
hands
I don't
before.
know.
It wasn't clear that bit, but and then he
That's
heads
it. Yeah,
to
so
the
he heads
trailer.
to Kyle, who's living in a trailer. Kyle's on his own at this point. His mum's out of town. To clarify, Pollard is not going there to look for Kyle. He's looking for his mother. And then Kyle's like, "Oh, she's not here right now." And he goes like, "Wait, shit, are you her son?" And he's like, "Yep." And from there on, he says like, "Oh, I knew your dad, and we were in the war together." And they have a conversation, and Pollard basically just gives him an exposition dump.
Well, it's sort of described in that I kind of liked the exposition dump in a way, in that they did give a reason for it, even though it's a stupid one. In that, so he basically asks, "Do you have a tape recorder?" And he gets a tape recorder off the kid Kyle, and so the idea is that he's recording the exposition to this tape so that if something happens to him, Kyle can get it to the news or something like that and whistle blow, which it sounds ridiculous anyway, so I don't think this kid coming with a tape recorder of a guy saying about how there are zombies, I don't think it's still stupid, but at the same time it's like that 80s stupid, and it gives a good reason to give the exposition, which I think was needed.
Yeah, so the exposition is basically that, much like how the Nazis tried to get their own super soldiers, this American division was also trying to get Superman, basically. They did like lots of grueling psychological and endurance tests and things to kind of beat all emotion, conscience, and all of those like human weaknesses out of them, so that they wouldn't feel pain, they wouldn't question orders, they'd just be like perfect killing machine. They tested it on loads of people and only like 7 survived. But as well as that, they then had to send them on this mission, which is the Black Ops mission from the beginning of the film. They send them out on this mission and they died, at which point they spray them with this chemical orange, this pesticide, which is the final part of the process when they come back as
It's kind of like the
where
awakening
they come back
thing.
as literal zombies. That was it. That's the gist, right? I didn't miss anything important, did I?
I thought it was a strange plan in that they were sending in the troops just to die, and then they were going to spray them with an activating agent once they were there. I thought that was a kind of strange part, but it gives way for the hibernation part.
But the idea was as well,
yeah.
like no friendlies. So once they're there, they just go fucking nuts.
Exactly.
And that's obviously that's what's happening here. That's why they're killing everyone, because there just are no friendlies. Their job is to shoot and destroy without discrimination.
Yeah.
Kyle believes it. Kyle's just like, shit, what do we do now? It's like, Kyle doesn't go, you're fucking crazy.
Yeah, he's very accepting, actually. I never thought about that. He is I think it's just because he knows that he knew his dad. I think that's just reason for him enough to go. And I think he does say that his dad was involved in the program.
Yeah.
But his dad gave up before it was complete, and they killed him.
So Pollard goes on a mission to track down Woodhurst, who we know has killed himself, but obviously he doesn't know that. So he goes on a mission to track down Woodhurst and kind of get answers, I assume. So he basically breaks into the military base, but he finds Stark first. Stark, the CO, just making that clear, the commanding officer, the one who literally gave the orders to the no friendlies orders. And so Stark kind of is there, basically held at gunpoint by Pollard. And Pollard's like, where's Woodhurst? And Stark's just like, he killed himself. Oh shit. At which point the soldiers arrive at the base, shoot the base up, start blasting everywhere, and Stark, who is their CO, kind of goes like, stop, and they do. They stop shooting, and he assumes he's still got power over them. You know, he's their CO. They're obviously drilled to take some kind of orders. So he's like, you know, fucking stop this, the war's over, your mission's done, get it? Fine, stop. and then one of them just says no friendlies, and they blast him into a cactus.
Yeah, that was strange as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they shoot him into it. I liked that. It was just like a stupid,
It was
ridiculous
funny,
gory
but I
death.
quite liked the way they were describing it before, and that so they kind of do like a semicircle around him, and then like they describe him like a puppet on strings is how he's being shot,
Yeah.
which I can really imagine like straight off the bat. I quite liked that.
Yeah.
And then he gets blasted forward into a cactus, which is which was very strange.
Overkill.
Yeah,
Overkill
exactly.
is underrated. So yeah, at which point Pollard has to make a getaway because they try and kill him.
Yeah, so he kind of has like a last man stand against them is losing. He's shot several times.
They want him to join them. They say join us.
But then he jumps into a river of water nearby and just basically makes his escape.
During the meanwhile,
That favorite saying during the meet.
Kyle, in a mad panic, he drives to Heather's house to try and protect her. Shit's going down in the town by this point. I remember, I think the first moment of the zombies attacking the town is when there's that couple making out.
Yeah, which I liked that scene, even though it felt like it really fell into the cliche, but at the same time it did something. And it fell into the cliche, then it fell into the cliche of pointing out the cliche. But then it still turned out okay, like I still enjoyed it after that.
Yeah, so basically this couple are making out in a car, and they hear a noise, and the girl's like, "What was that? Go out and see it." And he's like, "No, you know what happens in these horror movies. I'll get out and be killed, then you'll hear a scraping on the top of the car, and then it'll be my body, and they'll kill you too. So let's just make out instead."
Which, to be honest, I was kind of, he's douchey, but at the same time, like he gets to the point. Like I thought that was quite funny.
So he's like, the way it's described is he's like running his hand up her leg.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden he comes across a hand grenade that's been lobbed into the car, and they just blow up. So the zombies, I'm now kind of condensing because we got most of the important plot stuff out of the way. The zombies attack the town.
Yeah.
Kyle drives to Heather's house, where the sheriff, her stepfather, has like put a deputy there to protect her. And I really quite liked this bit. He comes in, points the gun at the deputy, and the deputy's like, "All right, just knock me out. All right, fine, whatever. Knock me out, then it's not my fault." And he tries to knock him out, and he hits him, and the guy just goes, "Ow!" Which I like, because in films all the time, people just get knocked out with a single punch, as if that's how easy it is.
Yeah.
But here it was like, "Knock me out," and he just punches him, and it's "ow," and then he hits him again and knocks him out.
I thought that was a very Shane Black thing.
Yeah, exactly. That was a proper Shane Black moment. He runs upstairs. Heather's coming out the shower for some reason. That's necessary.
Because it was the 80s is the reason.
Yes. And then what does he say to her? What actually happens there? I can't remember. He runs into a room, sees her naked.
Well, she's got a towel. It's modest, Harrison. But, it basically just says, like, we've got to go save your mum and your sister, put on some clothes and let's go. But they have, like, a moment, and I can't remember why.
Yeah, he says, "God, you're pretty."
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And it was a kind of... It was just having a moment, I felt like, because it felt like it had to have a moment there.
So the zombies are now attacking the town. They are massacring, like, everyone. And they arrive at the place where the pageant, the Christmas performance, whatever, where Heather's sister's performing. And they're shooting up the whole place. And the sheriff takes Doris, Heather's mother, into the church. And the zombies, well, a particular zombie walks into the church, and it's described in a very... I thought this bit was the bit that felt the most like the fog. It's like streams of light coming in. You hear the thudding of the footsteps and silhouettes, and all these like blue colours are described. It felt very the fog. And it turns out that the zombie that's arrived there is actually Doris's ex-husband and Heather's father.
Dun dun dun.
And the sheriff's like, "Oh, I've been taking care of your wife." and
which is also it just made even though he had so very little, he didn't have a lot to do. They just put in everything to make you like him, so that just made he was the person that I was saddest about, basically.
Yeah, no, I was quite sad when he died. So the zombie kills him. We then cut away. Pollard's now kind of recovered, and he's basically also now on his way into the center of town. He's got a rocket launcher.
Yeah, that appeared out of nowhere.
I thought it. I'm glad that that wasn't just me. He did just sort of get a rocket launcher. So everyone's now rushing to the center of town.
Mm.
Kyle and Heather, they're rushing to the center of town to save Heather's mother and her sister, and Pollard's heading into the center of town to put these zombies to rest. And then it's sort of, I'm not saying it's an action film, so this has to happen, but from a script perspective, a lot of action sequences happen.
Yeah, it's hard to describe the action sequences because they are just action sequences.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that like this is what happens. Action sequences happen. Zombies get shot, stabbed, set on fire. They just keep coming. That sort of just keeps happening.
Yeah, and it was all engaging for all of it, and it was quite and it was fun. I mean, there's so I think they get trapped at the end of this road. Kyle radios in for help. Pollard goes through the sewers to try and catch him, and there's a fun kind of fight in the sewers, and then he hears that one of the zombies is going after them above, so he fires a rocket launcher at a sewer drain, and the thing goes up and slices it in half, which I thought that was really cool. That was my favorite action moment of the.
It was cool.
Of the script.
It was very cool.
Yeah, although that was the action scene I think I found the most confusing, because he shoots down a grating, and I'm like, so that's the disc. And then
I know what you mean. Yeah, he shoots on the grating and then he has to blow open the manhole.
Yeah, so I assumed it was like one grating that then because one grating falls that like he's basically the zombie in the sewer. He's already like basically dead, but he shoots the grating and it falls down and crushes that zombie. And then he fires up as well, and there's another grating which then slices up the person. That was confusing, but it was still fun. I just kind of let it go.
They get up. They arrive at the church. Turns out that Heather's mother's also dead.
Yeah, although she has a weird ending speech before she dies.
A lot of rambling about how, like, God, she prays to God. Everyone prays to God, but some people get spared.
Yeah, strange that was.
Something like that. She was crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah, you could have. Yeah, it did come across as crazy speak, but at the same time, I feel like it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever, so it kind of took me out for a bit.
So they start prepping now for the final attack. He gets one of those bouncing Betty mines. Pollard does. He plants it on the ground. One of the zombies steps on it, and he's like, "Aha! You can't move now. You're screwed." And the zombie just like grins and walks off it anyway. Gets blown up, but just keeps coming.
Yeah.
That was cool. Liked that bit. And eventually Pollard and Kyle have a conversation, and he's like, he notices that he's been shot a lot, and he's like, "You're one of them, aren't you?" I can't remember exactly when this revelation comes, but he also divulges that he is Kyle's father.
It's very quick.
I didn't care. So he's like, "I'm your dad, by the way. I didn't die." And I'm the seventh member of Shadow Company.
Yeah.
But he didn't go through with it all the way.
Yeah.
But it also means that he is basically an unstoppable
killing machine
thing too. Yeah.
If we forgot to mention before with the Bouncing Betty fight is that he does get impaled. And he basically that's like his death scene. And then he comes back as a zombie, basically.
Oh, of course, yes, because yes, no, you're right. Sorry, this was a bad miss by me. Yeah, when he's fighting the Bouncing Betty one, Pollard does die, and Kyle finds some of that chemical and deliberately brings him back.
Yeah. And then as Kyle is and then basically he thinks that his dad is dead anyway. Pollard's dead, so he goes off, and then Kyle prepares to fight this Armbuster guy.
Yeah, so Armbuster's sort of the main one. He's the one that kills the guy in the prologue.
Yeah,
and he's the one that kind of gets the most focus in the script. He's the one that talks and like says "join us" and.
Well, he's not like clearly the main one. He's kind of like I suppose the first comparison that comes to mind is like the big orc in the first Fellowship of the Ring. Like they're all evil, like they're all dangerous, but this guy's just like the obviously like the bigger one, the tougher one.
Yeah. And all the way through the film, they're talking about how he has these glasses on. That's his gimmick, so you can't see through to his eyes. Which leads to the final action sequence, really, between Pollard and the main one. So he has a fight with this dude, and eventually it reaches the point where he's like, fuck it, I've been carrying this dynamite with me the whole film, and it's wrapped around his body, so he's basically Pollard's basically set himself up as a suicide bomber. And he runs into Armbuster and, like, embraces him to blow them both up. And the explosion happens. I can't remember exactly what the result of the explosion is.
Exactly, yeah. No, I thought that was confusing as well, so I'm good that it wasn't just me for that.
But Armbuster ends up having to crawl up the flagpole to get Pollard.
Pollard, while they're on the kind of flag tussling, he yanks both pistols out of Armbuster's gun holsters and shoots him in both empty eye sockets, so his brain explodes out the back.
He cuts his head off, and then he shoots his head so that it smashes like a watermelon.
Yes. So basically,
that's him. Like, he's gone now. He's dead. Then they remember. They're like, "Oh, it's all over." And then they're like, "Oh shit! No, it's not. We forgot about Heather's dad." So they go back to Heather's house, where Heather and her little sister are the only ones remaining now, and Heather's dad, in zombified form, is waiting for her. He sees like a picture of the family all together back when he was alive, obviously, and he kind of momentarily hesitates, and Heather but then he's like, no, zombie smash, and starts smashing up the place, and comes after Heather like I'm a killing machine, and Heather's like, you don't have to do this, fathers don't kill daughters, and then she gets out a toy gun.
Yeah. So, again, I think this is another case of the emotional scenes not playing as well as the just general badass scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of like the bit where it's like the Harry Potter moment where love kills the beast.
Yes. Because he won't shoot her. He's sat there like hesitating, and she knows he won't. And she then like gets her toy gun and pulls the trigger, and that kills him.
But I think
it doesn't physically kill him. It's like he's her childlike innocence and their relationship has caused him to just sort of.
I think the idea is that basically she whispered, like, even though he's disgusting, and they make a point of he's disgusting, she just doesn't stare away. She doesn't look away. She just stares around and says, "I love you." And I think that's the kind of moment that causes him to die, really. But I think that the toy gun is like a gag or something that they put in there as well. It's strange. It's you're not quite sure why.
But yeah, it is, as you said, it is like love defeats him.
Yes, that's the main. That's the point.
That's the point. So all zombies dead now. Pollard on Gurner. Kyle and Heather find each other. Kyle like, Dad, you must stay. Stay with me. We have Christmas together. And he's like, I can't do that, son.
Sometimes
your mother wouldn't understand.
Sometimes people are better off dead. He's like, but you never died anyway. He's like, well, that's not the point.
So he gets taken away, and he's like, are we ever going to see each other again? And he gives him a sad smile. Pollard is taken away, and that leaves Kyle and Heather together. Christmas music starts playing, and we're done.
Roll credits.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so as you were going through it, I realized I had more issues with it than I remembered.
Really?
In that, I think it's definitely one of these films where you just got to be in for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Like a more annoying way of putting it is turn your brain off, but I don't think that's true. I think it's just you got to enjoy that. It's just like it's a roller coaster, fun 80s film is what it's meant to be, and that's it. It certainly achieves that, and I think that if it was I think it could be a cult classic if it was ever made. Definitely, like it reminded me a bit of Big Trouble in Little China in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
and I definitely imagined Kurt Russell as like the main role.
He was.
Is that who was going to be listed?
Yes.
Yeah. See, it definitely it felt like it was written for Kurt Russell.
Yeah, which is great. I love Kurt Russell.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely helped even more. I think it even more
Yeah.
felt like it was falling into the tropes of all the films.
It is, in a way, a hard script to review because so much of the second half is just people shooting at each other and no one dying.
I think it was good though. I think it's a good case of how an action film can. The only thing that I would say is, besides that manhole cover, after that, it's just every single zombie is killed by just shooting them a lot. Like, there wasn't
Yeah.
that too many creative ways of killing them.
That's true.
But
Yeah.
the actual action set pieces were different all the way through, and they were enjoyable. Like, I never was like, oh, they've got to do more. I was looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. And there are many sort of, like, obviously it's an action film primarily, but there are many kind of horror images that stand out as being quite cool.
Yeah.
So I think it would have worked well as a horror movie too. The dialogue is serviceable. It's not quality Shane Black dialogue. In fact, all of the best one-liners are in the descriptions and the action, rather than coming from the characters' mouths. There's a few Christmas puns, like there is the bit where he goes ho ho ho, which predates Die Hard if you think about it. This was written before Die Hard.
Oh yeah. I never really thought about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it feels more like a John Carpenter film than it does a Shane Black film, bar that Christmas aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is by no means a bad thing. It's compared to Passengers, it's much clearer exactly what it wants to be. Like, it's a Terminator-esque, Fog-esque thing with unrelenting monsters that just keep coming. It's got like a nice sort of culty action horror vibe. The characters are clear. They have. I felt like they have more personality. Even if some of them were stock characters, they were at least engaging characters.
Yeah.
Like you said, the sheriff, barely in it, but you liked him. And and Pollard is just Kurt Russell tough guy, but he's a strong, cool protagonist. And that's what he is. Kyle was the character I probably had the most problems with. He just felt a bit weird.
Yeah, in that he was meant to be like the tough guy, the kind of tough loner guy, and then he's all of a sudden, like, I get the idea is that he had daddy issues, but I mean, he's very, very easily changes character to like a, not soppy, but like loving character. Like, he gets straight up and like hugs his dad, like straight away the moment he hears he's his dad, despite the fact that he's just heard he's a zombie as well. Which I thought was a bit strange, and he definitely was just whatever the script wanted him to be in the scene. And I think that this is my main problem with it, I would say, is that I thought the intro wasn't brilliant. I thought it got better as it went on, personally.
Oh, really? What was your problem with the intro?
Not so much like the very intro, like Vietnam scene. I think that was fine. Like, and I liked the introduction of all the different soldiers. I actually really liked that bit. It's just I found the dynamic between the two army rulers was a bit confusing, I thought.
Right.
Like, as in, it was a bit, especially when it came back to it, and I was like, so which one was wanting to do this, which one wasn't? And there's like a scene with a projector at some point as well, which never's really clear, because apparently, like, they're testing on a Vietnamese guy in the video. Like, it's not.
I guess that's just as like a guinea pig.
Clear, yeah.
Just to see
and
if
also,
it happens.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I had a problem with was just the fact that it was focusing so much on the army stuff and the backstory, is that it kind of felt like Kyle, and to a lesser extent like Heather, was just put in there just so it has human risk, like human stakes, as opposed to just cool. And so I'd kind of quite like if I just had not so much more of an intro, but just more like I had a proper introduction to the characters that I was going to care when they start dying.
Yeah. Well, they do put a weird amount of emphasis on Woodhurst for him to just shoot himself in the head and disappear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
he should have got his comeuppance.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't mind that he shot himself, but it's the fact that they gave so much emphasis to him before that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, this is just that's my main point besides the dialogue, I'd say.
Yeah.
And especially with and then when I did get my introduction I quite liked Pollard's introduction in the cafe. I think it's just once it gets to a bit the Heather and Kyle's introduction, like you said, in the diner, just a bit weird and just wasn't quite right. and it wasn't enough for me to instantly want like, oh, I want them to survive. Besides the fact that I know they're the protagonist,
Mm. Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
and every kind of reason why they made me like them was from the description. Like the every guy has a Heather
Yeah.
is how he
Is
described it, which instantly made
I
me
feel
like her.
like perhaps his agent or perhaps someone in the some of the producers said to him like write the characters like you write these bits in between, and that birthed your Lethal Weapons and your actual
Yeah.
Shane Black films almost. These bits here make that the whole thing.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, just definitely. There is a strange like dichotomy between the dialogue and the actual writing. Like
Mm,
in the all of the dialogue is just pulpy, or basically
mm,
all the way through. Like every single character, I can't think of a single like line where I actually thought it sounded particularly Shane Blacky or particularly
mm.
good, but a spoken line. All of my
Yeah.
favorite lines in the script were just the narrator, basically his
Which is
voice.
weird. Like, why would you hide your best material
Yeah,
from what the audience will never see?
yeah,
But I guess
exactly.
he's
Yeah,
at this point he's probably just trying to get something made.
true. Yeah, and he's definitely well. It stands out straight away as he has his own voice, and you can
Yes.
recognize it as a Shane Black film, despite the fact that it's very much a John Carpenter film as well. It's
Yes.
strange. It's definitely like a weird amalgamation of the two.
I do really wish we one day got this film because I guarantee it would be one of my favorites that I'd watch over and over again. Because whilst the script I didn't go like this is amazing, I'm
Mm,
sure if I was watching a lot of this stuff happen, I'd be like this is incredible.
yeah.
I really feel like I would have loved this film, and it's a shame that it never got made.
And I think besides the fact that, as I said, where I would have liked more of the hometown characters beforehand, I would have agreed with
Yeah.
you that I think it's a fun. I think it's kind of like a horror, a family horror. Does that make sense? And the fact that it's at Christmas as well means that it kind of gives you a reason to think about it every year, I suppose as well.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
I could
Another
see
one
you
for the Gremlins bunch.
exactly. I was going to say I could see someone having a double bill of this and Gremlins if it was ever
Yeah,
made.
yeah,
In that you've
yeah.
got the fun, kind of sweeter one at the beginning, and then you've got the full blown action flick at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I really liked this actually. I liked it more for. I enjoyed it more than I thought it was technically good.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with that sentiment too. What would you give it out of 10?
Um, I'd say a 7, just because I'm a bit hard. I feel like you're going to give it an 8 or a 9.
8. I was going
Yeah,
8.
I think just for me, again, like dialogue. I think if it was better written, I mean, I kind of
Mm,
liked the cheesiness of the dialogue in parts,
mm,
but for others, it was just a bit too much. Like it was just a
mm.
bit too by the numbers. And then as
Yeah.
well, I wanted to like the home characters, but that was
I mean,
what.
just to clarify with some of this dialogue, there are some really kind of stereotypical
Yeah, it is.
lines in
I
here.
can't think of any off the top of my head, but that's just because I think they kind of just
Mm.
roll off as like what would like there's nothing that's particular to Pollard as like this is a line Pollard would say. You
Yeah,
could put in any action hero and that would be what they would say because it's
yeah,
like it's the go-to line for some things.
yeah. There was one bit I did quite like as a line. It felt like weak Shane Black, but it felt like one of the few times in the dialogue where it did come through was right at the end when Kyle's fighting Armbuster
Mm.
and he says "fuck you" to him, and then Pollard shows up and they start having a fight, and Armbuster says "join us." Pollard does something like he shoots him and just says what he said in regards to what
Yeah, no, I
in regards
remember
to
that
fuck you.
now.
Like
Yeah.
that feels Shane Blacky.
The one actually, I did remember another one when you said it's that it's not a Shane Blacky thing, but it was a thing that I liked in the very beginning in the cafe scene where he's the kid's
Mm.
over the counter and he's got a toy gun and he says like, oh, if you have it on this setting, you're
Oh,
not
he
going to
wakes
shoot
that man up.
anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a sweet moment between the kids, so you know that
Mm.
Pollard's got like a sweet heart underneath a cold exterior.
And then it
With
comes back later.
and then it comes back later in that it's not like he's just remembering it in the fact that he's actually saying it to himself like advice, and I
Yeah.
quite liked that was a bit where I actually felt like it was underrated in that bit.
Good.
Cool.
Good. Well, it was nice to talk about a good script.
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy this one actually. It made me because when when we did the passages one, I was like, oh, do I really want to make this a series? It's a bit like if we're going to be doing this every so often. But I've genuinely really enjoyed this one, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that you put it forward to read it.
Oh yeah. Good. Well, I was watching the Monster Squad. I was looking at the trivia and they mentioned it.
Oh, cool. I hadn't heard about it until you brought it up, so I'm glad you did. But so that is our episode, on Shadow Company.
Yep.
Yeah, you can reach us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're at Real Opinions.
Yeah.
There's also an email address on YouTube if you want to directly contact us. We should be doing more episodes of this soon. I think the next episode that we're going to be doing is Alien Engineers, which is the... Although, I suppose that kind of breaks what we've already done in that it's the original script for Prometheus. As in, when it was written as another Alien sequel.
Well, that feels like that's different enough. That's
apparently
a film that didn't get made.
Apparently, it has changed enough that it does come under this thing, and that's going to be for the upcoming Alien Covenant.
So
that kind of ties into that. So hopefully, hopefully we might have it up by the time a trailer comes out. In which case, I feel like a trailer might be coming out before the end of the year. Yeah. People have been hinting that it comes out with Rogue One, so I'm interested with that.
Oh, I'm excited to do that one actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Right, and thank you for listening, and
thank you.
Yeah, join us next time. Bye.
Bye bye.